Alright, hey guys, welcome back to some more tank walkthroughs of the Dragonflight dungeons. This will be the first one I do. Halls of Valor is pretty much in a finished state. They might nerf or tune a couple more things, but I can feel comfortable doing this now a couple weeks before Dragonflight, whereas the other dungeons I might have to wait a little bit. So without further ado, if you're the one who will be teaching your entire guild every dungeon mechanic, and if you're also a tank, or if you're likely both, then this is definitely the series for you. I did this for Shadowlands Mythic Plus dungeons for Season 1, and I've had tons of people ask me to do it again, so here we go. I'm starting with this one, Halls of Valor. So, this is a Legion dungeon, one of my actually personal favorites from back in the day. This is when I first started doing Mythic Plus. Right out of the gate, these first two mobs, the champions, are going to be the important mobs for you as the tank for the first half of the dungeon, basically. They're going to be here in front of the first boss in the first 3 packs, and then the entire banquet hall after the boss, leading up to the 2 boss wings later on. Alright, so in this video I ended up pulling everything, but your first time doing this, you probably want to stop at these 3 mobs, so pull those first 2 mobs into these 3, and then just cleave those down as the first pull. Everything in this pull is a champion except for the mob I'm targeting, which is a Thundercaller. The Thundercaller is the only mob in the whole group that does any damage to your DPS. Everything else does only tank damage, except for the dragon also puts a debuff out, as far as I know. So the dragon, one Stormcaller right there, one Stormcaller right there in the middle of the pack. It's kind of hard to see. There's only 3 mobs. Everyone can kick these 2 Thundercallers, Stormcallers, whatever they're called. But otherwise, what you need to focus on as the tank is all of these dudes casting Rending Strike. All those Rending Strike casts are pretty short frontals, so they go like, let's say the mob is right here, it probably hits to about right there. So if you ever need to kite, you can pretty easily, and that's going to be pretty important so that like, you can like use Ring of Peace or use Shockwave or Leg Sweep to drop your bleed stacks, basically. As you can see, my bleeds stack up pretty quick, so within seconds I'm at 6 bleeds there. I got cleared by my healer. They'll all cast Rending Strike again, give me their bleed. It's a frontal, of course, like I said, and I have 6 stacks already. This is a pretty hard pull, and unless they nerf this bleed, which they should, definitely, then you're not going to want to do all this your first try. The dragon has this very important Lightning Breath cast, so the reason why I'm tanking it right here is so that the Lightning Breath goes to the side, away from the group. The majority of the group is going to be back here. The ranged players will kind of just plant as they come into the pull. And hopefully your melee get the memo and kind of hang out back here away from the packs, because every single one of these mobs frontals, including the dragon, that does a pretty big breath, about that big. I'll draw it again so you can see it. The breath's about that big. So this is the second breath I'm about to eat. I actually turned the pack so that I could kite and drop those bleeds, so I'm avoiding bleed stacks. You can see my debuffs up here. This guy's casting Rending Strike, just got a bleed there. And that's the most important part of this pull, is just managing your bleeds. The dragon can be kited pretty easy, as you can see. He kind of stops the cast all the time. I'm actually going to outrange that breath. It went to... The breath, once again, casting from the dragon there, probably went to about right there, I would say. So yeah, that's the first 3 trash packs. And then you get right into the first boss, Hymdall. This is a cool boss. So, okay, so you can control a lot of the stuff going on in this fight as the tank, luckily. This is one of the better designed boss fights after a whole expansion and tuning. So, the first thing he does, he puts out a Whirling Blade out there, and that blade will be there for like a full minute. And you usually have like 2 or 3 Whirling Blades out at a time, so they'll probably... I think they bait on players, so the ranged player was probably standing there, and then one will probably end up like right here on a melee, or like somewhere in the middle on some other players. So it generally kind of looks like that throughout the encounter. The other thing is he's going to cast this Horn of Valor. Horn of Valor is the dangerous part of the boss fight. It starts off by hitting everyone for a lot of damage, and then he calls a dragon. So here's the Horn of Valor, everyone's HP drops. That's going to be a lot of damage in higher keys. And then if you notice, I swung my camera around, and the dragon... Let me continue for a sec. The dragon is about to breathe. I saw it pull up right after Horn of Valor, and the dragon's going to breathe in this whole area over here. So we referred to that area as the entrance. We can refer to this area as the middle, and then this area right here as the exit. lane. So there's 3 lanes the dragons come. Every time he casts Horn of Valor, he summons a dragon, and they come and show up at either that spot. Here, let me clear it. They show up at either that spot, that spot, that spot, or on this side, that spot, and that spot of the room. So just be aware, kind of swivel your camera right after he casts Horn of Valor, and then call out to your guildies which quadrant is he's going to breathe in. As soon as the dragon breathes, that kind of one-shots people right there. But you can move to his quadrant right after, and you'll be safe no matter what, if you move quickly enough. We're gonna die to that shit. So if you manage that and keep the boss faced away from the group the entire time, then you will have an easy boss fight. The other thing to be aware of, like I said, face him away, is because of that bloodletting sweep cast right there. That's a tank funnel, puts a bleed on you if you don't dodge it or parry it. I think it's parryable, probably. But it doesn't do that much damage. This boss is definitely a party awareness kind of boss. So as you can see, it's kind of like playing volleyball or any kind of sport. You want to center the boss up after each Horn of Valor segment. He does a couple bleeds and a couple whirling blades in the ground, and then he does Horn of Valor again. So now I'm scanning. I saw the dragon spawn in the middle right there, and I moved the boss immediately. So here comes the breath. Tornadoes come out, dodge the tornadoes, and move back to the middle. I think you get stunned if you get hit by a tornado. If you guys don't know already, the seasonal affix is Thundering. This is version 2 of the affix right now in this video, I think. So the tank is always getting it at this point in the affix development. Make sure you always get someone to soak you as the tank. It's going to be really dangerous with bosses and mobs that have frontals, which are, you know, like half the bosses and mobs in the game have frontals. So be really careful with your debuff. I recommend just having someone come to you half the time. So yeah, that's Hymdall. As you come out here, this dude, Stormforged Sentinel, you guys might recognize it as the exact same mob from Tazavesh Gambit. Oh, I need to turn off Steam. But he has the exact same mechanics as those mobs in Gambit, and this guy just kind of patrols in an arc like that, back and forth. So you just want to go to the pack that doesn't have him currently. So I'm going to pull these 3 mobs. The only new mob so far in this pack, you got the 2 champions again, but the new mob is this Mythic right here. The Mythic has some very important casts to kick. So I'm avoiding the patrol, pulling these 3 guys, and then the important cast is called Holy Radiance. It's like a 50% heal for all mobs in the pull. So I immediately kicked that. 1 melee player can kick it full time. Rune of Healing is not the biggest deal. You can just move the mobs out. And it also heals you if you stand in the rune. I think it's like 5% health per second. A lot of healing. But yeah, what I'm doing here is just making this easy. I'm having them kill the Mystic. Someone actually pulled the Sentinel. So the Sentinel is actually special. He makes it so that this guy is now uninterruptible because he's near the Sentinel. I can't remember if the guys in Gambit did that too, but otherwise he's the exact same mob. He sends out a crackle beam like that, and then he does this charge pulse AoE. But yeah, the important part about this mob is that you cannot kick mobs while he's in the pull, just like the Inspiring affix that was recently retired. RIP Inspiring. I had not intended on pulling him yet. I wanted to pull him with the other Sentinel in the hall later, but it just so happened that we pulled him. Okay, so going up here, I pulled those a little early, so I'm going to have them focused on the Sentinel so that we can kick this Mystic right here and this Thundercaller right here, who's going to cast the Thunderous Bolts on the random party members again. But the Mystic, again, just make sure someone is able to kick Holy Radiance, and then everybody else can kick the Thundercaller and ignore the Rune of Healing that the Mystic does. Otherwise, it's just the same champions again, just manage your health, manage your bleeds, and kite when you need to. So Holy Radiance is going to go off here. It healed the Sentinel for quite a bit. It actually didn't heal him as much as I thought it would. Maybe it's because we have Immortal Strike on him. But yeah, you can probably combine lots of these pulls if they tune the bleeds from the champions down. Otherwise, these champions are very scary. Like 3 champions plus is no joke at the moment. Alright, so now we get into the Banquet Hall. So we still have some more trash with all these same types of mobs. So there's more champions, you can see that guy, there's a Mythic in this pack. And then there's one Sentinel that patrols this whole area. He goes all the way from there where he's standing, down through the middle of the Banquet Hall, and to the end of the hall where the Fenryr area is. So you want to play around the Sentinel pad, because again, he prevents casts from being kicked while he's around. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling the two nearest packs that I can safely. And then the only actual new mob in this area is the Marksman. There he goes, he just jumped out over here. So I'm pulling the pack over to him. And you can see my health dropping from these bleeds. The bleeds are nasty. But I'm following the Marksman around, and this is a good rule of thumb for tanks in general. You want to know which mob is the hardest to move in the pull, and just move every mob to that mob. So this Marksman is your focus for gathering. And ideally, you want to pull the mobs to start with to a location where if he jumps, he's going to be in a safe place, like kind of regardless of where he jumps. So like if I pull him to here, there's a chance that he goes back into the hall, but it's pretty slim, I'd say. That's why I pulled him back so far. But I think the Marksman just shoots random players. I think he hits pretty hard. And he jumps away pretty often. His little disengage. Otherwise, these are all the same mobs. Kick Holy Radiance. Don't die to the bleeds. Oh, I didn't mention this earlier, but this is a fortified 16 key. If the icons are too small in the YouTube video. Alright, so as you notice, the Sentinel is now way back there. So we can just walk this way successfully. I think Hyrja is probably the way to go because of less timing. I think less timing lines up pretty well on higher keys once you get to Hyrja. But you may want to go Fenryr first as well. I don't think either is a bad idea. But left is the Hyrja route. So I'm pulling these same mobs. These are all the same kinds of mobs. We got an Archer, a Thundercaller, a Marksman, and a Mystic, I believe. Or maybe it's just two champions, no Mystic. But as you can see, I'm pulling them out back here. I lined them to this spot, which works to pull the Marksman all the way across. Because I want to make sure that we don't pull the Sentinel when he stops at like right there-ish, kind of off the screen. So I'm grouping the mobs on the Marksman, typical Archer mob. Someone just body pulled the two Shield Maidens that are up here. This is kind of a tight area, but they're like slightly past the stairs here. These two Shield Maidens, I'll talk more in a second about them, but they just have a very, very short frontal, even a shorter frontal than the champions. Luckily they don't put bleeds on you, but they do put this amplified physical damage taken debuff. So this thing's kind of nasty. I think it's either like reduced armor or increased physical damage taken, one of the two. It's a short debuff though, luckily. So you see it's about to fall off just because I kited for... Or no, he had trees down, that's why I lost it. Alright, so now I'm going to combine the rest of this pull. Typically this is the Purifier up here, this guy, plus 4 Shield Maidens there, 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 and there that you want to combine. So I'm going to pull those. Ideally you ask someone to kick them down. If you're an elite tank with a ranged kick, you can do it yourself, but most tanks can't do it themselves. I leapt up there just to kick it because no one else did. Alright, so as you can see, all these Shield Maidens, they're the important part for you. Everyone else can kick this Purifier, but you need to worry about these frontals they do, because they continually stack up this armor reduction. And you need to micro kite. So when I say micro kite, I mean like step out of their frontal range just briefly so that they don't hit you and you can reset your stacks. So I might not do it here. Hopefully I do to show you. I'm playing the very overpowered Protection Warrior in this one, so I may not need to. Yeah, so Breach Armor is the one, the 6-second debuff, and then the Immortal Hue, which is a short frontal. Which just does physical dam. I think it actually puts a bleed on you too. I think that's a bleed. Yeah, we can do that. Something really learn from the other side, I guess. Yeah, this pull isn't bad. Just be careful when you kite. Try to kite away from your group because they have very short frontals. Alright, so this pull is the same thing. There's 2 shield maidens, just like the last pull. Instead of 4, there's only 2. And then this Valor aspirant is a new mob. She's kind of like a lieutenant. And you got to be careful of her ability that can one-shot you. So she does this on a random player. Valkyrie's advance. Targets the ranged player in this case. I think it's just anybody. I think she can target tank with this too, so make sure you're spread for that. She jumps to them, and then she immediately will try to blast the group with Blast of Light, and I think that targets a random player. So here it goes. Blast of Light, you can only see where it's headed based on her shield animation, but it's pointing that way, so if anyone's that way, they're going to die. Luckily, no one died. I'll be making weak auras for this and stuff, and I'll bet like I'll have a sound for her Blast of Light because that is easy to just get distracted and die too. So here's another one. She did her jump, and now she's gonna Blast the Light directly that way. And I think my Moonkin player walks into it here. Boom. Edge. Yeah, again, the shield maidens, just make sure. Oh, there it is. So did you see how I moved out just barely from that breach armor cast? I just moved from there to there, and I actually outranged one of them, I think. I think I still got one. But that's how short you have to move just to avoid it. And it's good to know when you can do that on mobs, because micro-kiting can save you an enormous amount of damage taken. I'm going to speed up a little bit. Oh, I missed it. Alright, so I pulled the left guy first. There's 2 mini bosses here. Solston is the one on the left that I just pulled. The other one's off to the right here that I'll pull as well in a second. I would not recommend pulling these together like I do. But if you want to pull them together, then this is the timing to do it, because they have perfectly timed abilities that they do, and you need to desync them. So I pulled Solston first. He starts Eye of the Storm, and the minute he starts Eye of the Storm, you want to pull this guy. And this is a thing to do in higher keys. Again, you should just do this guy by himself when you're first doing the dungeon, because I'll show you why in a second. Eye of the Storm does a lot of damage. Everybody has to be in this bubble to survive it. I think you take double damage if you're outside the bubble or something like that. But then the real problem here is that this guy does the Sanctify cast. He sends projectiles all out around him for 6 seconds straight. And if any one player gets hit by those projectiles, then everybody dies. This is likely to get tuned, but I'm pretty sure someone gets hit here, and you'll see. This didn't used to, yeah, so someone got hit there. The entire party died, except for me, because I'm an OP prot warrior at the moment. But yeah, so like I was saying, in Legion, that didn't used to do nearly as much damage until like the very highest key level. So it's likely they tune that down, and if they do, then definitely do this pull this way so that your group has something to hit while he's doing the Sanctify cast. You can just stand out at range like I'm doing here and just have full uptime. I'm going to speed this up because I think I just fight this solo for a while. Everyone's running back. Alright, everyone's back. So we finished the mob, dodge some Sanctify again. And what's cool about these 2 mini bosses is that they show exactly what Hyrja does in the boss fight. So there's 2 sides to this room, right? The dude that did Eye of the Storm is on the left side here, and the dude that did Sanctify is on the right side. So whenever Hyrja's on one of these sides, she gets empowered abilities, and she does one of the 2 like special abilities that they had. So you always want to start Hyrja on this side. This is just historically the easier side. Takes a little bit to spawn. She's got some RP. There's a lot of RP in Legion dungeons. Despite that, I still love them. Alright, so I pull over. As you can see, if you have her in the middle, she has both buffs from both sides at the same time. You never want that. So right now she's only got this beam of lightning going on to her. That's what you want to see. And the rule of thumb here is just tank her on this like pointy part of the room on either side. So start her on this side on that point. And you'll see some abilities she does here. She changes abilities based on which side she's on. Eye of the Storm happens pretty quick. And then right after this, she'll do the Tank Blast, which is Blast of Light like you saw earlier, but it's unavoidable this time. So make sure you use a cooldown each time she presses it. And always face her away as if you're going to move her. I actually think in this video I probably kept her here because we can tank and heal the Eye of the Storm casts. But in reality, you probably want to get blasted across the room and just go over to the other side after this tank hit. So that's why I positioned her this way. I think I'm going to charge back though. Yeah, so I'm keeping her on this side in this video. And the reason for that is we're confident that we can heal through the Eye of the Storm. That's going to go down here in a sec. But the thing is, Eye of the Storm will do something like double damage on the next cast because she gains stacks the longer she's on one side of the room. So the incentive is to drop stacks and go to the other side and deal with the other mechanics. But in this case, we decided to tough it out and just heal it. And the strategy is really nice if you can do it, because Sanctify is what she casts on the other side, and as you saw, Sanctify is hard to dodge, one-shots the entire group, and it's just straight up overtuned at the moment. Although I do have a feeling it'll be tuned correctly by the time Dragonflight comes out. So as you can see, we're about to hit the third Eye of the Storm. She's going to be at 16 stacks. I think each of these stacks is 10% increased damage on her lightning abilities. So this is the last one. This one you'd probably need heavy cooldowns for in high key. You can see our group starting to get chunked. Thundering just came out at the right time. Actually, that's kind of good for the healer. Thundering gives a 15% damage and healing buff while it's out on the group. And that's Hyrja. So you will get a speed boost here, the developers say. They just haven't put it in yet. You'll get like a 75% move speed buff until you fight Fenryr, I believe. Hopefully you keep it for Fenryr, that'd be sick. We'll see with more Mythic Plus testing coming up. There's about 4 weeks till Dragonflight launch at the moment. Alright, so you can see my slow ass making my way through the Banquet Hall. And this Stormforge Sentinel, that's where he stops his patrol on this side. It's at that point on both sides of the Banquet Hall, so you can kind of use that knowledge to play around where he patrols. Because ideally, you never want to fight these Sentinels by themselves. You want to fight them with other Sentinels. And so there's this one here in the Banquet Hall that patrols. There's the one at the beginning earlier that we pulled on accident that I would have pulled with this guy pretty early on into the Banquet Hall. And then there's two more over there at the exit to go to Odyn and God King Skovald. So you always want to pull these in at least pairs of 2, or in this case I'm going to try to pull this guy in with the next 2 for a group of 3. So I'm just going to fight these 3 mobs. It's a marksman, a champion, and a rune carver. Rune carver, I don't know if I fought these yet. This is a new mob so far in the video. So he casts Etch. I think it just does a channel damage on a random player in the group. Actually can't remember exactly. We know what the marksman and the champion does. Shattered Rune just does a big blast on a player as well. I think it hit Show Monk there for about 60% of his health. So that's going to be pretty dangerous. Probably want to kick that. Alright, so this is the Fenryr area. Immediately you'll notice a dragon land here on the right. I think I may have walked past it too fast, but it's going to spawn like right there. Make sure you hug left because of that. You don't want to pull it. Make sure you go this way. All these stags, there's some roleplay here. All these stags will run in fear and then despawn, I believe. At least all the ones with the fear debuff. You don't want to pull those. Those stags are extremely dangerous right now. So what I'm going to do here is just clear like a nice intuitive path for the group. I'm pulling 3 of these bulls and 1 bear. All the bear does is cast Rending Claws on the tank, I believe. Just a little tank hit. It doesn't do a ton of damage. Piercing Horns, all the bulls do a Piercing Horns cast on the tank. Same kind of deal as the bear. And then they just have a second mechanic, which is that stomp I'm moving out of. There's not like a reliable way to sync them up, unfortunately. The meta might end up being to skip a lot of these packs. But for now, they actually seem pretty easy. I think they're a lot easier than they were in Legion at the moment. So I just pulled 4 to clear a path. You could probably pull more, honestly, but I didn't need to in this route. This route is actually perfect count, I believe. Alright, so if you saw there, the path to go, after these bears die. So like jump across this gap so you can get to the first place that Fenryr is. Fenryr has like a two-phase fight. So you fight him for a little bit over there on the right. You can see him hanging out just eating a bowl. So you wanna go through here and jump across this gap so that you don't risk pulling that group of 3 over there. So show your group where to jump on that. And then Fenryr, this is the first fight. You pull him from 100% to 60%, and then he runs, and then you fight him again. This is not a very hard tank fight. In fact, I don't think he does really anything to you. The thing you need to be aware of that's not intuitive though, is he'll do a cast here any second where he just instantly hits anything around him, like 12 yards around him. So like something like that. And he splits damage with it. So your whole group, your ranged players included, need to move into the circle. It's an invisible circle, 12-yard range. And they need to help split the damage on the group. I guess he didn't do it before this Ravenous Leap. I don't know if he does that every time, but this Ravenous Leap, everyone needs to move out and spread, because he'll leap to everyone, do some damage, and then leave a bleed stack. There's the instant attack, so everyone's health is dropped. It's I can't remember the name of the attack, but it's something claws, savage claws or something. So it hit everybody, it hit 4 players. No, it hit all 5 because I'm the tank. I didn't take any damage. It did like 30% of our health and a 16. So everybody needs to be in to help split that damage. And then once he does that, I think you can move out for the leap, unless he does it a second time before. Let's see. Okay, so he did it twice. And then you move out for the leap. Nerving Hell. Oh, he did it 3 times here. That was way off. Okay, so he did it 3. He started with a leap, and then he did the AoE claw attack 3 times, and then he did another leap. That's the key parts of the fight. So one thing about the leap too is that he always leaps to the very farthest player first. You can kind of game it where if someone's really far away, the moment that he leaps, they can either vanish or feign. I think they can just stop the entire leap process if they do that if they're first. Kind of like the Cujo boss in Workshop or the Sand Queen boss in Toldagor. And also, if you move fast enough, so like let's say the person started here and he leapt there first. If you move fast enough, right as he leaps, you can just dodge the whole attack entirely and avoid the permanent bleed stack that goes in the group. This isn't really relevant for tanks, but this is just stuff you can tell your group. He actually never leaps to the tank. The only time you get bleeds as the tank is if you're standing near somebody that he leaps to. Alright, so there's a few new mobs here. I think I was testing something that worked in Legion doesn't work anymore, which was pulling the wolves into the water. And the reason why we tried to do this is because the wolves can be extremely dangerous, and they just kind of leap to random players and murder them. But don't worry about this part. Don't pull them to the water, it's pointless. What used to happen in Legion, for anyone curious, is they would attempt to leap to someone, but they would actually end up on the ocean, on the lake floor, so they wouldn't actually do any damage. They do like an AoE when they land. And so then they swim back to the tank, and then they leap back to the bottom of the lake again, and then so forth, so forth. But the other thing about this is if you notice this warg has this triple buff, that's because he's near 3 other wargs. And so they each increase its damage by 20%. So these wargs actually exponentially scale in damage the more you pull together. Which is kind of annoying, but you can game it to where you can kind of just pull 3 wargs, CC1, pull 3 wargs again, and then pull the CC warg in with the boss, so there's only one with the boss.
Okay, good, now I know.
Unless you're feeling good and you can just pull 8 wargs, which is very, very dangerous, but you know, I'm sure some people will. Here's the other group of wolves I need to pull. This is probably the realistic pull size for these. As you can see, they're hitting people for like half their health and a 16. And this is with 392 gear with 4 sets on and everything. They actually almost killed me there. These things are insane. Oh, my shield just broke. No wonder. Epic. was like, probably you're taking damage. That can't be right. Yeah, I'm just gonna repair my shield real quick. And I think I'm gonna clear those wargs. Oh, I'm pulling 2 with the boss. That's what I did. All right. So yeah, you could probably pull these with the boss if you're doing a key level where you're confident about this. I don't think they buff the boss with their like pack buff. Let's see when they get near Fenryr here. Oh, so if you saw that when I was targeting the warg, it had like 4 stacks because the little wolves that the boss now summons also buff it, plus the existing warg in the pool. The boss luckily does not get buffed by any of these wolves. Thank God, that would be insane. But the only difference now on the fight is that Fenryr has two additions to his abilities. For one, when he howls, he summons 3 little wolves, and you just gotta make sure you pick them up. 2 of them usually spawn near the boss, so I'd save the taunt for the 3rd wolf that spawns out pretty far. And then his second mechanic is this Send the Blood cast. He just chases a party member around. I don't think he can ever target the tank with that. Unnerving Howl, here comes the wolves. Just tag him with something. Try to have an AoE ability ready to get threat as soon as he starts casting Howl. And he does the leap, so I step away from the group so I don't get hit by the AoE bleeds. And then I let him come back here so that we can safely have all that room that we cleared of wargs so that people can kite the boss with the fixate. Alternatively, you can also just like follow the boss around and let them figure it out. It shouldn't be too big of a deal. I think you can bop the player that's focused by that and they'll take no damage. You can... Someone told me you could intervene it, although I have not tried it. So if you're a prot warrior, you might be able to intervene it. But you can also just heal through it if someone wants to stand still. I think it's healable at this level. As you can see, Fenryr is still doing the AoE instant cast physical attack. Make sure everyone's like stacked in between the leaps so that they can share the damage on that. I think it did one-shot me on one of my tanks that I tested this with when I was trying to solo soak it. Sent the blood. Can chase someone around again. I just kept him here this time, which is probably the better strat. Like you just kind of stay where the fixate ends, then you move back to the cave on the next fixate in this strat. All right, so now that we've killed both Hyrja and Fenryr, now we're gonna get 150% movement speed buff. So this is the buff you should have gotten earlier, but now you're gonna get like a super version of it, and it's actually slower if you mount up here. So you want to stay off your mount. Just go back the way we came, across the water, back up the hill where we fought the bison at, or the bears. Dungeon does have a lot of travel time. So you might have noticed these beers sitting on the table, and I'll talk about those in a sec. But also, the important thing is here, I was able to avoid this sentinel the entire time we fought in this area. So now I can pull him with the 2 sentinels that are right here that you have to fight as well. I think you can skip those, or you used to be able to. I don't know if that's still the case, but I've just been pulling all the sentinels. I think you could shroud past them back in the day, or you could gateway past them as well, I think. But it's important to try to pull these at the same time to try to sync up those charged pulse casts. So if you notice when I tagged that guy, I threw a weapon at the single one, and I taunted these at the same time the weapon hit to hopefully sync all these casts up for melee. And it's nice to fight these when you have the speed buff, because you can run out of their AoE very quickly. This is very nice for your melee to have that speed buff. Like I said, these are the same guys that prevent stuff from being kicked while they're in the pool. Just like the inspired affix. And otherwise they're just the same mobs as the Gambit Sentinels.
I like the effort though.
So right after this, we're going to do some pretty advanced stuff with the beer that's on the table. And I'll try to explain it as we go. But the reason why we pick up the beer is because you can use it to do the next area slightly faster. So I'm having my healer get it. This last area has 4 mini bosses. Each one of them, you can choose what order you fight them in, and I'll show you what order is probably the best to fight them in. So you want to start with the one here, 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 and here. You want to start with this one, second to the left. And then the next one will be the farthest left. So the beer tech is, I had someone pick up the beer back there, right? It lasts about 1 minute, so they have to pick it up right before they go across this bridge to this last area, or else it'll time out. And then what you can do is you're limited to only pulling these guys one at a time. But if someone uses this tech to throw a beer at this guy, the moment after you talk to this dude, then you can drag him over, cause them to fight each other for a split second, and then this guy will become pullable after he finishes his RP. So I'm starting this. My healer just threw the beer at the guy over there. Then I'll show you what to do next. And this is very advanced. This is like just a slight time save. You don't have to worry about this if you're new to the game whatsoever. It's not a big deal. As you can see, they're kind of like fighting each other because of what the beer debuff did to them. He does that for like 10 seconds. And then he's back to being just standing here. So now you can talk to him. That's the difference. You couldn't talk to him before. So as soon as you talk to him, he comes in combat. And now you're fighting 2 kings instead of 1. So the goal here is just to keep killing one as fast as you can. So we're going to cleave efficiently, but we're also going to target down King Haldor because he's the lowest. And as soon as he dies, you can go pull the next king and add a second target to the pull again. So that's how you do this room a little bit faster. Now, as far as their abilities go, they're actually not too dangerous anymore. These guys used to have some crazy stuff they did, but it's actually not too bad now. They do a sever hit on the tank. That did like a chunk of my health there, and it leaves a dot, as you can see up here. But it's not a big deal. Just play well and you won't die. He does, each one of the kings will now do a cast called Unruly Yell, and it's kickable by any melee DPS full-time in your group. And you'll never have more than 2, so like 1 tank plus a melee DPS, like let's say me and Luigi are just on it, then we can kick every single cast that the kings do. There's the Unruly Yell cast. They now cast Wicked Dagger now that we've pulled several of them. Wicked Dagger just does some damage to a random party member. It used to one-shot on Legion, it was crazy. But now it's fine. There's the Unruly Yell cast again. Now that we're on the last king, they also will cast a 4th ability called Call Ancestor. Here it goes out. He just summoned an Ancestor, and it'll spawn somewhere far away. I saw it go out over there with the projectile he did. So now you'll see it'll just slowly walk to the boss. I don't even remember what happens if it gets there, but it's pretty easy to avoid. You can CC the dudes that spawn, you can just kite them, you can slow them, you can do whatever. None of these guys frontal, so don't worry about frontaling your group. It's doing a second Call Ancestor. That went out to kind of a similar spot. Now that it's pretty close, I'm going to move. You know, I don't even see the first one he casts. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe it like spawned out of bounds or something. Weird. Anyway, you just kite the 2 kings around the room a little bit to avoid the Ancestors. The Ancestors move pretty slow if they're not CC'd. And that's all the trash in Halls of Valor. Now we just got 2 bosses. So be standing here as the tank. That's where the Aegis spawns. As soon as you pick it up, it starts the RP. So just click it as fast as you can. And now you've got this extra action button up here. So the Aegis on this fight is tricky. You actually can't press any abilities while you're channeling the Aegis. Once you channel the Aegis, you have to take your hands off the keyboard or you'll wipe the group. It's a very long channel. It's kind of annoying, but it's thematically kind of cool, so I'll give him that. This boss is infamous for killing Tettles over and over again, my fellow caster on the Titanforge podcast. I'll link the clip of what he used to do to people, but this boss has been heavily nerfed. So the first ability he does should be Fellblaze Rush. Here it is. So he targets a random player, kind of looks their direction, and he's going to go charge them and do an AoE around them. That's used to do insane damage, but now it doesn't do too much, just a little bit to Luigi there. Alright, so then the second cast he does is the very important cast for you as the tank. So make sure you're kind of close to the boss, but not too close, so you can channel this big shield around you. It goes like this big around you and protects anything behind you from the damage from Ragnarok, or heavily reduces it at least. So the timing here is important too. So the moment he finishes Ragnarok, I'm going to put up the shield. So I hit it right there, and my hands are off the keyboard, because if I press anything, the shield will stop. Not a lot of mechanics do it that way anymore, but in this case it still does. And the reason I started it at that specific time is because if you see, I still have this much time left on the shield, and he's casting an ability. And that ability can either be Savage Blade or Fellblaze Rush. He does it alternating, I think, or maybe it's just random. But Savage Blade is a tank hit, and Fellblaze Rush is like a group hit. So if everyone stays in the shield for whatever ability he does right after the shield, then they'll take heavily reduced damage. So I didn't even touch my HP there. And then he picks up the Aegis for himself. You kind of get behind him, do some damage to him. Make sure you kind of leave down these elementals. You may want to ask your group to focus them if they do a lot of damage. They're not doing a ton of damage right now, so it's actually okay at the moment. Now the other important thing is, now that he finished channeling the Aegis, as you can see, the Aegis is sitting in a random spot in the room. So you have to find it after he finishes channeling it. And you can kind of like keep the boss near these ads until they die. But then eventually you need to make sure you pick up this Aegis over here in like the next 10 seconds. So I'm making my way over. I'm kind of keeping him near the elemental for cleave while I do it, trying to be efficient. I pick up the Aegis, move into a more free area away from the puddles. And then as you can see, his energy has been going up. So he does like a Fellblaze Rush, Savage Blade, or something like that as his energy goes up here. And then once he reaches full, he'll do the channel again. And that's when you need the Aegis. Many lives will be lost from forgetting to pick up the Aegis or not pressing it in time right there. The Res Ragnarok starts, press your Aegis, and AFK. I definitely wiped a group or two in Legion by forgetting to pick up that thing. Back when I was a noob. So there you go. He's gonna go pick it up. And he'll probably die around this time in a 15. But this is just rinse and repeat from here on out.
The tank after he grabs it there. No, it's a random target. People try to convince me that all of Legion is a random target.
Alright. And then the only thing left in the dungeon is Odyn.
Or it's like,
This is a very long dungeon, 5 bosses. It used to be a 45-minute timer on Mythic Plus. Right now in beta it's 38, I think, which is kind of tight actually.
yeah, I've tried to face
It may need to be increased to 40. But Odyn will come down after he talks for a long time, as does every boss in here, except for Fenryr, because he can't talk. And then as soon as Odin's done talking, you have to talk to him to start the fight. So you just stand here. I think after he finishes that paragraph, you can talk to him and start it. So I just talked to him, start the fight. Be sure you're spamming an ability. If someone's closer than you to Odyn, they'll probably get aggro and get hit once. This fight's actually pretty straightforward. The only thing is the ad that spawns, you need to make sure you keep it under control. They spawn some spears on a player. The spears spawning is what does the group damage there. Everyone got hit for like maybe 20% of their health for that one spear exploding. And then he spawns an ad. So this is the important part of the fight. If this ad is left unkicked, then it can get out of control and kill the group. So as soon as it spawns, I went to it. You only have a few seconds to find it and kind of try to get threat on it, because then Odyn also does this Radiant Tempest cast. You can see it barely up there on the UI. But this Tempest cast is a one-shot no matter what. He will kill you, quote unquote, and send you up to the Raptors up here somewhere. And that way to watch the rest of the fight, like it's a gladiator fight. But the important part of this is that the Obliterator spawns, he won't cast for a sec, but then Odyn forces you to run away. So ranged have to get the first 2 kicks on this guy. In some instances, you can get the kick as the tank for the first one. Like right there, someone was able to kick real quick. But most of the time, you want to just play it safe and have range ready to kick. So as soon as it's over, everyone rushes back to him, then melee can kick second or third, depending on how it goes. So make sure the Obliterator dies. Every time he gets a cast off, he gets like increased attack speed, increased cast speed, and then does more and more damage per cast. And I think one cast just does AoE damage too. Alright, so then Odyn shatters the spears, just sends a bunch of balls out, just dodge the balls, and then the last mechanic he does is this runic brand. So everybody in the party gets a color. There's 5 brands on the ground to match your colors with. I got yellow, so I think it's that one over there. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah, you just match the colors like kindergarten. I got confused because I don't know if I passed kindergarten. And then once you get to your rune, you get a very long buff. So this buff, it's debuff, but it actually gives you 50% damage. I think it tops your health when you get it too. So like if you're about to die, if you hit the rune, you get full healed. And this is where you want to use CDs. Odyn's a pretty good fight. I've always liked this boss. The only problem with it is that you cannot use B-reses. So if someone dies, they don't actually leave a corpse. They end up going up to the rafters and have to watch the rest of the fight. If you wipe, however, everyone just jumps down from the rafters and they're still alive. So you don't have to res, you can just pull again. So here's another ad spawn. This one's tricky. I found it kind of late, like it's already down to 70%. I wasn't really looking. So I charged to it to get out of Odyn's circle he's doing right here. And I'm just gonna kick it and walk it out of the circle, hopefully. But yeah, this is like the only dangerous part of the fight is the ad. As long as you kick the ad, you're good. Then rinse and repeat. Those spears start to do more and more damage. I think he puts down like 3 spears at the same time from here on out. So it's gonna hit us for 3 times as much damage as the first time he did it. We got another rune buff right there, and then that's the end of the fight. I think this dungeon is still gonna give the original Halls of Valor loot just scaled up, as far as I know. But yeah, that's Halls of Valor. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll be doing more of these dungeons in the upcoming weeks. Be sure to leave a comment or anything that you think I missed or left out, and I'll put the clip in from Tettles fighting God King Skovald back in the day. Good shit there. Thanks again. I'll see you guys in the next video.